should be a very interesting point of conversation and topic. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of different opinions on it. I'm not sure exactly 100% how I feel about it. I think it really kind of depends on what you get out of gaming and how you feel about the direction that Xbox is going right now. And, that's fair enough, in my opinion. But I do find this to be a very interesting take, and I do find it to be a situation where Microsoft does seem to be leading people down a path. Now, I'm not sure if that's by design or whatever the case may be, but it does seem kind of clear that Microsoft has a certain idea in mind for what they want from their gamers and from their fans and things like that. Is that going to continue to evolve and change? Listen, we'll see. At the end of the day, I think it really kind of comes down to individuals and things like that, and maybe Microsoft has a point, maybe they don't, but let's get into it. Should be a fun video. I'm Crab Gamer, and of course this is Crab Gamer Reviews with another video. Thank you for taking time out to check it out. Like, share, subscribe. That really helps out the channel. I know a lot of you don't realize that, but it certainly helps out the channel. And at the end of the day, I do daily gaming content, so if you're looking for someone to do content that's fun yet informative, you can't really go wrong. You found the guy. So yeah, with that being said, this was interesting. So Shuhei Yoshida, who used to work for Sony, was talking about Game Pass and talking about how subscription models won't advance the industry. Very interesting to hear that. Listen, he doesn't have a dog in the race necessarily because he doesn't work for Sony anymore. He actually had sort of a falling out with Sony. So, yeah, it's interesting. So few has come as wise and as, interesting as Mr. Yoshida, the former Sony employee, has weighed in on how subscription-based services are changing the gaming landscape. He's talked about how detrimental they could be to the future of gaming if they're not managed carefully. It's no secret that Game Pass has become one of Microsoft's biggest money-making areas. The service allows players to pay a monthly fee and receive a large selection of games in exchange, including day one exclusives, which there are no exclusives, but day one first-party Xbox games. The approach is well liked, but Yoshida has given justification as to why it's not all rainbow and roses. Yeah, interesting. In an interview with game developer, Yoshida discussed how developers who are cozy with these services have an advantage and how it will become harder for third-party studios and indies to cross that divide. He explained, if the only way for people to play games is through subscriptions, that's really dangerous because what type of games can be created will be dictated by the owner of the subscription service. That's really, really risky because there always must be fresh new ideas tried by small developers that create the next wave of development. But if the big companies dictate what games can be created, I don't think that will advance the industry. Now, Yoshida acknowledged there's an inherent bias when discussing Game Pass and PlayStation Plus because of his long-time PlayStation association. But he believes PlayStation Plus is healthier because Sony isn't giving away first-party games for free immediately. The former president says subscription models need to allow people to spend money to buy new games. He adds, after a couple of years, there won't be many people willing to buy those games at that initial price, so they'll be added to the subscription service, and there'll be more people to try those products in time for the next game in the franchise to come out. So this is a big point of interest. He says, to allow people to spend money to buy the new games. After a couple years, there won't be many willing to buy games at those initial prices, which is right. I mean, can anybody really argue against that at this particular point? Like I am a subscriber to Game Pass, but at the same point, I subscribe to it and I also buy games. But I know a lot of people who haven't bought a single game in, I don't know how long, and so it's just one of those things that honestly kind of surprises me that people kind of look it off in such a way right now, right? Because what I mean by that is at the end of the day, we realistically have a world where a lot of people on Xbox don't buy a bunch of games, Honestly, it's just one of those things where We know that gaming is kind of changing in a way. But look at, say, Doom, for instance, the Dark Ages, right? A lot of people were excited for this. This game sold less than 1 million copies. And it had 3 million quote-unquote players, but when you think about it, it's kind of a flop in terms of what it could do. So they can try to put that up as a success and go, we have more players with Doom Dark Ages than we have on any other Doom game. But the problem with that is the other Doom games were people buying the product, right? And so you have that initial big upfront cash, money coming in. Right, so if you sell, a $60 game and you sell, 2 million at launch, that's quite a bit of money. Now with Game Pass, a lot of people, it's not like games. Mostly, a lot of games aren't going to draw a big influx into Game Pass, so that means you already have that same amount of Game Pass subscribers that you had previously, but they're getting access to this game that cost you a lot of money to make, and so that can be a little bit of a deterrent down the line. Again, there's a lot of Xbox people who don't buy games at all, and I think you can't really dispute that at this particular time. It's just, honestly, it's just the way that it is just that it's that honestly, we have to just kind of look at these things and go, what is Microsoft thinking? But at the same time, listen, I'm not saying like Game Pass is bad. I actually think Game Pass is, like this year in particular, a hell of a value, right? It is a really good value, and but the thing is, I do agree that it's also a dangerous thing because it could lead to people not buying games, which, that's the big rallying cry for a lot of Xbox fans or influencers, is this whole, who cares if our games go to PlayStation because they pay while we play? Like, that's some kind of burn or something, I guess. I don't know. It doesn't really come across as a burn to me. It's like, Blockbuster was around for a long time when I was growing up. We used to rent some games there, but, we still bought games. You also, GameFly still exists, and believe it or not, and it's a situation where people can still rent games if they want. It's like, I get the Game Pass thing because it is cool, but at the same point in time, I also feel like it has created this group of gamers that like pretty much refuse to buy anything, and and listen, Microsoft, make no mistake, they seem to be pushing people towards PC, and they seem to be pushing people towards like streaming and things like that. If you look at all their, whenever they talk about stuff, it's usually, we've had growth in the cloud segment, et cetera, et cetera. And when they talk about this, recently they had this retro arcade thing put into Game Pass. And it was very interesting the way they worded this, right? Because this is a streaming-only service, right? It's from Ant Online. And they're like, we're taking our backwards compatibility and game preservation a step further with this. And it's like, Microsoft looks at streaming as game preservation. That should tell you everything you really need to know about what Microsoft is thinking and where their head's at. At the end of the day, I find it to be kind of humorous that that they kind of look at it that way. To me, game preservation is, something you own. Like, I can look in my stacks and stacks of games, pull something out and play it, and it works. It's not streaming something, right? You don't own that. You can't own any of the games that are streaming. They want people to go into and pay for subscriptions because you don't own anything. And I think, the reason being for that is, right now, we're paying $70, $80 for games. Nobody's going to pay $70 or $80 for a game that you can only stream when you have an internet connection, right? Like, I think that's, like, factual. Nobody's going to do that. The places that have tried to do that all have failed completely. So, yeah, when we look at this and we go, okay, well, that's just the way it is. It's pretty clear that Microsoft kind of wants to go that way, and if they're streaming only, then they dictate who can go into the service and who can't, and then you could be cutting out some developers, obviously big third parties included, who don't want their stuff to go into this service, in particular day one. They could get left out in the cold, and so again, I don't find that to be particularly good for the industry, but you guys might feel differently. I'm not saying Game Pass is bad, by the way. I think it's good. I think too many people have gotten used to not buying their games, though, and that can be bad, because they're really letting Microsoft kind of hold them by the cojones and dictate what they like and what they don't like, and what they play and what they don't play. So with that being said, I'll link this. You guys can check it out. How do you feel? Do you think Yoshida's onto something? Let me know. Rack 'em up. Crap Gamer out.